Now I'm going to deal with those that are the explosive type. Not the stewers, but the spewers. These are they that, when something happens, they will explode. Jesus goes through and says it this way. He says, and whoever says to his brother, we said that, shall be in danger of this fool. But therefore, verses 22, near the end of 22. Shall be in danger of counsel. But whoever says, you fool, shall be danger of hellfire. That is someone that verbally explodes in anger. Whether it's saying profane words or whether it's cutting down name calling, whatever it is a verbal expression that is explosive of anger. What does Jesus say? They are in danger of what? Of hellfire. Those are strong words. Very strong words. That God himself would speak these just because someone's buttons got pushed and be able to set it out? Strong words indeed. The fourth expression is this, because we go right back to the beginning. And that is when a person not only verbalizes, which is verbal abuse, it's when a person takes it to a physical tone, which the end result is murder. Isn't that incredible? That in these short verses, Jesus is going through identifying all the different levels of anger. From the stewards to the spewers. From that which is just in your head, that is just in your heart, to that is physically acting out in a physically abusive tone. And Jesus calls it out. And he addresses it very, very clearly. As you read as he goes on, he will say, therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift before the altar and go your way first and reconcile with your brother, and then come and offer your gift. You know, it's interesting that in this day and time, that has changed. That when God speaks to us about things that are going on and we want to reconcile, and we try to bring that expression out, we try to communicate, it is killed. And oftentimes people run with their own agendas within it. You see, the answer that God is saying is this: how can you come to me in an act of wanting me to forgive you when you've got issues with your fellow man? You see, Jacob never received the blessing until he was understanding of the fact that his behavior was not only in opposition to God, but opposition to his fellow man. God's peace with Jacob was he wanted to transform him, but he wanted to start with his name and his reputation. His name meant what? Backstabber, heel grabber, liar, thief. He wanted to transform that. And the only way it can be transformed is if he learned how to deal with God and his fellow man. It came with the forgiveness. It came with the humility. It came where it's no longer about pride, but it's about obedience. We watch for Jacob. Remember his wrestling with God? His fighting with God? And when it was all over, when dawn was starting to come and the angel of the Lord said, let me go, what did Jacob say? I will not let you go until you do what? Until you command your blessing upon me. And what does God say? What's your name? What's your name? What is the name you made out of yourself? His name was liar and thief and con man. And he says, my name's Jacob. The blessing came when he said, from this day forward, you will no longer be called Jacob, but you will be called Israel. Why? Because you've wrestled with God and you've wrestled with man. And what happened? You prevailed. Jacob, you made it. And it is our struggle as well. We wrestle with God and we wrestle with man. It was Abraham. God gives a promise and he takes it in his own hands and ends up with Ishmael. His promise was not Ishmael. His problem was Isaac. And he got Ishmael. You see, there was a transformation that needed to happen where we are getting out of an attitude of religion and doing things in our own way, in our own might, in our own strength, and following what God's will is to allow him to do it his way. You see, there's a difference between the world and what should be the church. There's a difference between the world and God's people. When you look at the world is full of dreamers with their own dreams and their agendas and their schemes. The world puts this out to you. You do things our way, our strength, and our power. God says, no, you will do it his way, through his strength, and through his power. The world says it's about creating big buildings because that shows your power and authority. It says creating popularity, money. It's about those things you can't even afford. And what does God say? Without faith, you can't even please me. The world says it's about a hierarchy and a chain of command. God says to give the people one heart and one mind. The world said it's about power and being powerful, and God said it's about the blessing of the meek, those that I control, those that are willing to surrender their will to me. The world says focus on results. God says focus on the value of the people I'm trying to save. The world says focus on rewards and gifts. And God says focus on me and see my wisdom, see my strength, see my power. The world says focus on pleasures. God says I'm the author of all good pleasures. You see, and it's foolish to think that we could accomplish the plans and the work of God by using the world's methodology and the world's value. It doesn't work. The one way to be able to keep our anger in check is this. Is it our will? Is it our will that is being affected? Is it our desires, our goals, our focus? Is that what is being offended? Is that what is being put to the side? Or is it God's? You see, there's a big difference between our anger if it is established in our will versus our anger if it is established in that of God's. Understand this. All of us have emotions. I've talked with you before about how there are 4 primary emotions, and upon those 4 primary, there are over 68 to 86 different emotions that set from. The emotion of happiness, sadness, scared, and anger. Anger is just one of them. God wired us in a specific way and programmed us in a specific way to communicate with him. All of the senses we have, hearing, smell, sight, touch, all of those God gave to us as a gift so that we could fully communicate with him. Emotions as well are there that we could communicate effectively. It's kind of like those warning signs on a dashboard. Emotions are there to tell us what's going on the inside. And so God has wired us with the emotions. The question is, with those emotions, what have we done with it? Have we surrendered it to God, or do we claim it for ourselves and do it within our own works to resolve it our own way? You see, when growing up, I had many individuals tell me that having anger is bad. And they would point out the verse in Matthew and forget about the verse in Ephesians. The verse in Ephesians says this: be ye angry, Ephesians 4:26. Be ye angry and not sin. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Be ye angry and sin not. I didn't understand that. Is it okay to have anger? I'll put two ways. Be ye angry and sin not. There is an anger that leads to sin, and there is an anger that would lead you to righteousness. Let me explain. I know this is going to be real controversial. Let me explain it. Think about it this way. You have the emotions. As you start developing a relationship with Jesus, as you spend time in God's Word, as you're spending time in prayer and meditation with Him, you establish a relationship. He speaks to you. He talks to you. He speaks to your heart. You become one with Him, as John 17 speaks, where Jesus is saying, Father, that we are one, but more so that they would be one just as you and I are one. One mind, one heart, an emotion that is beating together. He wants that kind of relationship that is so intimate that when God gets angry, you feel the anger. And those things that break the hearts of God, you will find breaking your heart as well. You see, when you see that, that ends up being an anger that leads to righteousness. Do you remember Moses? He just comes down from the mountain, 40 days talking with God. God gives the 10 commandments. He walks down, he sees a golden calf. His anger is struck. 40 days face to face with God. His heart breaks because his God's heart is breaking. And he takes it and he throws it down. How can you deserve God's blessings when just for 40 days you can't even hold on to Him? Do you remember with Jesus? He walks in Matthew, you find this in Matthew 3:5. He looks around and it's on the Sabbath day and they question Him. Is it okay to heal on the Sabbath? Is it okay to free somebody from their illness? Is it okay to pull someone out of the grips of Satan on the Sabbath? Or would that be work? Pharisees do not say a word, and with anger he looks at them and he heals them anyway. An anger that led to righteousness. You could go further and you look at Jesus as he walks into a temple and sees them buying and selling. Those that were symbols of his own sacrifice, treated as a marketeer. And he goes in and you see him with this rage of anger. He takes a cord and he starts turning over a table and getting people out that should not be there. And when the noise is gone and when things have settled down and there is an atmosphere of holiness and awe, when silence enters into the temple, he says, my Father's house shall be what? A house of prayer. But you've turned it into a den of thieves. Do you see the transformation? When we can get to a place that we are so aligned that our desire, we thirst after the will of God, that when his heart breaks, that which God feels, we start to feel. That is his church. That is the desire of God for his church. Do we seek after his will? You could look in Galatians with Paul in terms of how he deals with the Galatians. As a matter of fact, Paul does it this way. He talks about the fact that in a very short time, the church had opened itself in Galatia to a new gospel. Not the gospel that was presented in scriptures, but a different gospel that was not being preached by the disciples. And in anger, Paul writes down these words to the Galatians. Kind of like back then's email. And he says to them, it's wrong. This isn't right. Turn things around. And in the anger, God had blessed the church for those that turned it around. You see, there is this anger that will lead to righteousness.